Okay, great. Alhamdulillah. So, welcome one and all to this impromptu live streaming. It's essentially a test, a dry run. I will start officially next month, early next month perhaps, maybe even next week. But I wanted to just see if I can get to grips with the tech. And as you can see, I did actually try to start at 10 o'clock. I even did some tests before, but I had no clue whether it was working or not. It seems to be streaming. Apparently I can be heard. Yes, there's only there's 4 people. If anyone else can just constantly give me some feedback in the chat, just to let me know that I am being heard, then that will put me at ease. Otherwise I might do something silly and start messing around with settings and undo what's actually, try to fix what's actually not broken. Alhamdulillah, I can be heard. Fantastico! That's where we want to be. Alrighty, so this won't be a long session. As I said, it's a test. I'll share it on Twitter for what it's worth, just to increase the numbers, if you like. Do a bit of algorithm whoring, a bit of whoredom, and it won't last long regardless. Inshallah, we will, unless someone's got any questions, anything they'd like to ask that I may hopefully be qualified to answer, I will give it a bash. Otherwise, as I said, this is just a test, just to see if the tech's working, so that the next time when it's done properly. There will be some structured content in terms of a dars, in terms of a subject matter to cover briefly. Won't be all lectury. I am not myself a lectury person, but we will cover some Islamic topic, discuss something in the news, as it were, related to Islam and Muslims, which is potential, but more or less everything nowadays related to Islam and Muslims, in some way, shape or form. And even if it's not on the topic of Islam and Muslims, we can certainly give an Islamic analysis or see how a Muslim might interact or engage with that particular discussion. Okay, so alhamdulillah, we have some not in any particular order now. First time I'm ever reading a chat live, so it's quite a interesting, I was going to say unnerving, that's maybe an exaggeration, an interesting experience. So I'm not going to read these in order, and thankfully there's not so many of them that I'm bamboozled. But when's the next video coming out? So I've been traveling quite a bit. I'm going to give you a list of excuses now, and you know, there's a saying, excuses are like a butthole. Everyone's got one, pardon the Hebrew or the Yiddish, let's say. But yeah, I've did a lot of traveling during COVID. Essentially, I didn't go anywhere, and then even after COVID, it took me a year to get my mojo back, and then I started traveling like a madman. So I'm barely staying in one place, places I shouldn't really be going, and for reasons I wouldn't recommend either. But that's kind of what I do, or what I've did in the past, and I've got back into that. So as long as I can get back safely from wherever I travel, inshallah, then I can dedicate more time to finishing off these projects. So I've got a bunch of videos. In fact, I've got 2 years worth of scripts, if you like, and notes, and you know, IDs and subjects, and let's say the what you'd call what in Islamic universities they call the mudhakkirat, the notes, if you like, the cheat sheets. I've got all of that, like I said, several years worth already. It's just recording with them, and there's a good few open playlists that need closing. So more specifically to your Jazakallah khair, for wishing me safe travels. So regards to the next video, I just need to carve myself out 2 or 3 days to finish one. I was thinking of going with the next episode in the Wahhabi Ottoman War series, because we did the first 5 episodes with the history. Not that we're not going to talk about history beyond that in the remaining episodes, but we mostly focused on history, and we touched upon theology or creed, aqidah issues. And so now we will move more squarely onto the aqidah issues, the theology, but it will still have a historical interplay to connect it back. So yeah, that video it should have been done a while ago. It's just it's how it is. Yeah, cool. Inshallah, so that's the one. And then I've got to finish the final episode of the Civil War series. I've got one episode missing of the Does Islam refute? No, how's it go? The very first playlist I did on Islam, Science and Reason. I've got one episode missing from there that deals with Christianity and Judaism, or the people of the book. That needs doing. Then there's a bunch in the civilizational series, which I broke off to do the Ottoman series, and then from the Ottoman one I broke off to do the Ibn Abdul Wahhab one. So we'll try to tie up these loose ends. In the meantime, I am a bit somewhat active on Twitter. Not that I'm saying that everyone here should necessarily go there, but I do post stuff, even little video clips that I haven't put on YouTube. In fact, just for a bit of entertainment for those who haven't seen it. Let's see now. Now again, this is a technical trial, so I might mess all this up, but I'm going to see if I can move something across from one screen to the other to play this video for you, my sister and brother. Word to the mother.
Armored cars and tanks and guns came to take away our sons, but every man will stand behind the men behind the wire. Through the little streets of Belfast in the dark of early morn, British soldiers came marauding, wrecking little homes in scorn, heedless of the crying children, dragging fathers from their beds, beating sons while helpless mothers watched the blood pour from their head. Armored cars and tanks and guns came to take away our sons, but every man will stand behind the men behind the wires. Not for them the judge and jury, nor indeed a crime at all. Be when Irish means we're guilty, so we're guilty one and all. Round the world in thrill take goes Crumlin's men are here again. England's name again a salver in the eyes of honest men. Armored cars and tanks and guns came to take away our sons, but every man will stand behind the men behind the wire.
There you go, all done. So alhamdulillah, that was hope that was as good for you. It did for you what it did for me. I found that very emotional, actually. The background, for those who don't know, is a couple of things happening. Of course, we've behind us, hopefully, inshallah, for a while, is the Gaza war, the Gaza genocide, and the Irish, amongst all non-Muslim nations, and perhaps even more so than many Muslim nations, which is quite treacherous and disappointing, but that's another issue for another day. So the Irish have been very vocal in their support. Many other non-Muslim societies or communities within nations have, within countries, but Ireland seems to be at many levels, up until almost the government and parts of the government, certainly ministers and MPs, have been extremely vocal in their support for Palestine. And this goes back to the shared history of colonial brutality and colonization. So the Irish suffered it from the English specifically, and then British more generally, and the Palestinians, of course, suffered it, or suffering it now, from Zionists, and that would include the wider Zionist non-Jewish community, such as the UK, the USA, etc. And whilst this advocacy of Palestine, of anti-genocide, was being heard so eloquently and passionately from the Irish people and the Irish nation, many Zionists, being the racists that they are, decided to coin a new term called Palestinian, Palestinian mixed with paddy. Paddy it comes from is equivalent to saying the N word to an Irish person, depending on who's saying it. So they will call Irish people. The English would call them Paddy. From Saint Patrick. Saint Patrick being from Patrick. Patrick from Saint Patrick. Saint Patrick being the patron saint of some or other form of Ireland. I don't know how much of it, whether for the Ireland as a whole or a subset or a particular aspect of communal life. But anyway, he's a patron. He's a saint in Ireland, Saint Patrick. So from there you get Paddy, and then with Palestinian it makes this coin this new term. So the Irish started wearing it with pride. And then off the back of that, of course, there was this famous altercation in combat sports, professional combat sports, between a certain brother from the Northeast Caucasus, and a certain Irish lout, and perhaps a lot of other things can be said about him. And so this was an expression. I posted this video as an expression of solidarity, but or rather to display and evidence the solidarity. Why the solidarity, I should say, the backdrop, the backstory between Irish and Palestinians, is because of the shared colonialism. And as I mentioned when I put this tweet out, not that it's only known to me, it's quite well known, but this. When the British took over Palestine, the mandate, what they call the Palestinian Mandate, following the First World War, and then from there they essentially facilitated the establishment of the State of Israel, the Zionist entity, and the British governor of Jerusalem described it as a little Ulster, a little Jewish Ulster, Ulster being another name for Northern Ireland or British occupied Ireland. So. Hang on a sec. Let me just. Yeah. So someone's being a bit cheeky. I mean, I don't mind being cheeky, but but when you're being anal, then I will silence you. That's the power that we wield here. Yes, and contraband, because essentially it's supporting a rebel song. These are known as rebel songs or resistance songs, and they're banned. They're considered, the T word, terrorist. So they are they're essentially illegal. So hopefully that won't affect us. I mean, it is past behind us, but anyway. So okay, so I know how to play things on the side now. That's good. I'd also like to know how to. I guess we need a different technology to allow the audience to contribute directly, to come online and speak, so we can hear them. I don't mind that. That would be nice. It would get a free-flowing conversation. But I guess that requires, like I said, different tech. StreamYard. Young Smarks says StreamYard, the host with the most. Okay, or maybe go for that. Yeah, Bella Ciao, the famous partisan Irish song, but this one was musicless and had children in it, and more directly, there's a correlation between Palestine, or the Palestinian resistance of occupation, colonial occupation, and that of the Irish. So it's more directly related. Yeah, so this is really all I wanted to do. We've already been waffling on for 20 some minutes. Really just wanted to give it a test, see how it works, see how the chat works. Maybe we need a moderator to help the conversation flowing, a bit of housekeeping. I'll add something else. Again, this is in case people on Twitter, and I don't necessarily, or now it's X, I don't necessarily recommend it, being the sewer that it is. But that same Irish lout made some racist comments against the Muslim combat sportsman, saying that he's, how do you say this without being rude? Saying he's a cousin, whatever, and you can fill in the blank. That they inbred. He's an inbred. Whereas in actual fact, the North Caucasus nations, and I can spend plenty of time talking about this for those who are interested, from the east where the Caspian Sea is, all the way to the west where the Black Sea is, the North Caucasus, known as their sub-nations, if you like, or the nations of the North Caucasus, autonomous republics, from east to west would be Dagestan, Chechnya, Ingushetia, Ossetia, Kabardino-Balkaria, Karachay-Cherkessia, Adygea, and then you have the Krai, or the, if you like, the region where Sochi is the capital. But really, you could say Dagestan. I don't like that name. That we really need to change that name. But anyway, for now, let's say Dagestan, Chechnya, and Ossetia, and then essentially what's called Circassia, or the Circassian titular republics. Amongst these nations, the indigenous peoples of the nations, because of course you have those who've become naturalized through centuries of migration, but the aboriginal peoples of the North Caucasus, they themselves practice, if I pronounce the word right, exogonomy, is that the right word? But basically it means that they don't marry their cousins. As a point of culture, they marry as far and wide as they can within their ethnos, within their ethnic group, but not in the same family. They try to marry distant relatives or distant tribes. And amongst some of them, particularly from the center to the west, they call this their khabza, or their culture, their tradition. One of the reasons, a lot of their culture is warrior culture, which isn't a surprise to many, I guess. But one of the reasons is because it created bonds, fraternal bonds between tribes who may otherwise be warring with each other. But when you've got intermarriage between two tribes who are rival, then you're likely not to fight, right? Because you've got some literally some skin in the game shed between the peoples. So as you have, whether it was the Mongols or the Khazars, not in this order, by the way, Huns, Arabs, Persians, Turks, Ottomans, Russians, whoever it might be, the Imperial Russia that is, whenever this area was attacked, they developed these warrior culture, warrior traditions, and one of these is marrying far and wide to strengthen one's allegiances beyond the clan, beyond the family. So it speaks to the ignorance of this person, that he's assuming that just because you don't see the wife of a particular combat sport athlete from Dagestan, that means that you will assume every other wicked stereotype, such as that they're inbred and things like that, without giving the game away. It's not as if these nations aren't handsome. They have handsomeness amongst them, so it's not as if they've got anything to hide in that regard, but they have protective jealousy for their women, of course. And this is not, again, something unique to either the Muslims of those areas or Muslims in general. Even non-Muslims, they will, those who are traditional, they will not want to display their bride for everyone to gape at and to leer at. So that was also something of relevance. So now let me go backwards, because I didn't do this in any particular order. Okay, honesty before modesty now. I see the last comment is, how are you so well learned on Eastern European Russian nations? I'd like to think, hopefully not showing off, but I'd like to think I've got a good grasp of Eurasia in general, which is all the way from Japan all the way to Ireland and the Greenland. Not so much actually the westernmost part of Europe, other than England, which of course I have to have some awareness of, being born and raised here. But certainly the rest of Eurasia, which is essentially where Europe crosses into Asia and beyond. And then the Middle East or what was traditionally called the Near East would fall into that, and North Africa. Sub-Saharan Africa, I'm weak at. I'm not very strong at. South America, I'm not very strong at. But I just got, it's because of Islam essentially. I was into maps, cartography as a child, as a teenager. I would look at I was given a gift by a brother who eventually became Hizb ut-Tahrir and then left, and then became Sunni Salafi Athari and kind of steered me in that direction back in the day. But I think I was given a gift by him. No, sorry, let me correct that. I was given gift as a globe, but then he commented, he just pointed it and he said, I asked him how many of these are Muslim countries. I didn't know at the time, and and he gave his opinion, and I kind of corrected. I said I think there's some more, and then we got into discussion of why aren't these countries united? Then why do we have 50 or so Muslim states on the globe, and yet they're not united? Were they ever united, and what caused their split? So this got me on this journey of reading into spatial history, and anthropology gets linked to that, the study of humans and their culture and languages, etc. And then I wanted to know about the things that I was reading about, so I would start traveling. I would save up whatever money I had as a college or school, or whatever money I could get, and instead of, I guess, buying what many people might buy, I decided to go to really dodgy places, which landed me in a lot of trouble. Lots of arrests, lots of interrogations, lots of personal items getting confiscated, lots of getting turned away from airports, or actually not so much turned away, more getting prevented from leaving airports, let's say, because I'd go to these places which were considered, let's say, restive regions, if not active combat zones. But for me, I found it fascinating because that's where some of these junctures, these cross-civilizational clashes would be. Sure, I can share the stories. Maybe not this time around. It depends how long the stream goes. But yeah, I've got plenty of stories. I'm not. I will of course keep identities private and names. Not that most people will know individuals I may have met along the way. Some of them have been famous, and some of them have been infamous for wrong reasons, as in wanted for atrocities, let's say. But everything from, well, I should we'll save that. We'll save that for next time, inshallah. But yeah, so I just got reading into, initially my interest in Islam was to do with, the Muslims and politics and history and that kind of way, and then eventually I started studying the religion from the, how can you say, source texts, or learning about the Quran, learning about the Sunnah. The first time I heard, incidentally, the word Wahhabi was from a Shia. We had, my dad would employ this Iraqi Shia to write calligraphy. He had an excellent pen. It wasn't his profession, but he just happened to have learnt this in Iraq. So he would write, Ayatul Kursi and various ayat and various surah, and he'd put them in frames. He'd do with his own hand. He'd do the black for the main stem of the writing, and then he would use different coloured what would you call them, markers to give some shade, like a red shade, just to make the writing stand out. And then we'd have these placed on alcoves. Is that the right word? Dado rails or whatever, all over the house. And when I was getting into Islam, I wanted now to pray and everything like that. He said, "This is good." This Iraqi calligrapher. He said, "But be warned of the Wahhabis. They are very bad." I said, "What's a Wahhabi?" And he told me what he told me. And I hadn't heard of any sect before this one word. No, the sect. And then after that, I learned about something called Hadith, which I found fascinating. I'm sure this correlates or resonates with many people. As Muslims, many of us, certainly the people, my peer group, Hadith was something we just hadn't heard before. We heard the Quran a lot, but Hadith wasn't mentioned for whatever reason. Maybe because I come from a low-class background, I don't know, so we didn't have that kind of Islamic education from generations back anyway. And then eventually started, self-learning, attending classes that were going on outside of the north, more towards the south, Birmingham, Manchester, London, these places. And then I studied officially as well. I studied officially in Jamiatul Imam many years later, just because I wanted not just because I wanted some certification or some qualification, but also because it was more structured rather than doing it all by myself. I wanted some structured learning, which I got. And I in Palestine, I traveled Jordan, and spent some time there. But I can't say that you learn there, but it wasn't for the purpose of sitting down and having any courses. but it was more just to meet the people of knowledge and try to benefit and that's basically it. So, but I've always been interested in things tangential, but still related to the religion and the kind of feedback in, whether that be said anthropology. And so from geography you go to anthropology, and then from there you go to ethnography, and things tend to branch out, and they feed back into each other. Yeah, hopefully that's answered the question. The first book, incidentally, that I found inspiring was the Times Atlas of World History. It's a huge thing. It's probably costs 50 quid now. When I got it back in the day, it was a lot cheaper. In fact, one version of them was stolen, so I bought it again. It's basically maps, but then it's got annotated maps, essentially, an annotated atlas. And I gobbled that up, and then I started fantasizing about what if this border was stretched here, and how would you do it, and who would fight who, and what would you need, and from there you kind of go into you kind of then see why that border exists and why it doesn't. Borders tell you a lot, in fact, about countries and where the next wars are. In fact, I will say, without claiming to be a soothsayer, but I predicted several wars several years before they happened, simply from having been there. The latest one, for example, Crimea, I was there just before the war broke out, and I said to people, this place is going to kick off, just give it and I was hoping it wouldn't, because it was an amazing place, and lo and behold, within a few months it kicked off. That was 2014. That was the last conflict zone I made in that part of the world that I went to. So let's go back now. Some of the questions. Give some advice on how we can improve our speaking skills. I don't know. I don't think I'm not a public speaker in terms of crowds. I'm confident speaking like this. I value my privacy immensely. So I've did a bit of radio. Believe it or not, I've starred, as in physically on video, in a commercial. I say starred. I wasn't the star. There was a bunch of people in it, but I did a commercial actually for a particular brand, and I still remember the jingle. Maybe I'll sing it one day. A particular brand of what would you call it? Confectionery, perhaps. This is going back some years. So I did a commercial, even TV commercial. It wasn't aired in the West. It was aired in the Far East, from what I know. But the jingle was all in English. So maybe we'll get back to that or discuss that, or revisit that episode sometime further down the line. And I've did a bit of radio work. When I say radio work, I don't mean like as a paid professional. You have these Radio Ramadan things. So I've did a few hosting, again, a good few years ago, when the Radio Ramadan, Radio Ramzan craze first started. But that's it. I don't think I've got anything particular that anyone else has or does not have. I just hope, I would like to think and hope that I'm confident in that which I've studied, in that which I have geeked out in, and went into deep nerd fest in. I hope I would restrain myself from speaking about that, which I have relatively little or sparse reading or learning, or world experience. And obviously, if there's something you're passionate about and you think you know about, you can talk about it with a degree of confidence and expertise. So that's what I would say to that question. There is the dua, of course, of Musa in Surah Taha, which one could look up, where he asks Allah to expand his breast, Rabbi shrah li sadri, and so on, which I know that some people recite at the beginning, but it's not from the Sunnah, as far as I know, to recite those verses before necessarily one starts a lecture. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but it's not like something that was done before one starts public speaking necessarily. Any other questions, or are we done? I appreciate, by the way, people suggesting these other alternatives to StreamYard and to what I'm doing here. Blue Sky. I've heard of StreamYard. I haven't heard of Blue Sky, so we'll give that a look in. Islam was introduced by Muslims ambassadors, and in the year 1888 Islam entered the land of Eastern Caucasus. I've got a. I mentioned this in the video. Entered in the year in the reign of Umar ibn al-Khattab, Habib bin Maslama and other of the Sahabi actually entered, of the Sahaba, excuse me, entered Derbent, which is the oldest city now in Russia, and which was once the capital of what is now Dagestan. By the way, it shouldn't be called Dagestan. I really don't like this word. I actually was in touch with some. By the way, if this is a waffle that no one wants to hear about, just let me know. But I'm just shooting the breeze as we're doing this test and maybe getting a gauge of the audience and what they like and may not like. But the word Dagestan comes from two words. Dag is a Turkic word for mountainous, hilly, and Stan is a Persian suffix for land of or the country of. So Dagestan means land of mountains. The indigenous Aboriginal people of that region are neither Turks nor Persians, although there's a Persian link with the Sahaba, which I'll mention if anyone's interested, at the Battle of Qadisiyah. But anyway, that area itself was known amongst the Latins and the Roman world as Albania, not to be confused with Albania in the Balkans. So to distinguish between the two, we would call historic Dagestan and Azerbaijan as Caucasian Albania, either Albania which is in the Caucasus, as opposed to Albania in the Balkans. Albania, where Tirana is the capital, on the Aegean Sea, bordered by Greece to the south and Macedonia to its northeast, and Serbia to its north, and Bosnia, Croatia to its west. So that's Balkan Albania, and then who are Indo-European belong to the Indo-European ethno-linguistic family, whereas the Caucasian Albania, what is now split between Dagestan and Azerbaijan, and even Azerbaijan shouldn't be called Azerbaijan. Again, there's links to the Sahaba with this we can get into, but those people, the Aboriginal people, belong to the North Caucasian ethno-linguistic group who include Northeastern, more specifically, who include the Chechens and the Dagestanis and the English. And when we say Dagestan, we actually mean a whole host of nations. The most prominent in terms of numbers and prestige, if you like, are the Avars, to which the famous, Habib Nurmagomedov belongs to. But then you have also others like the Lezgins, or Lezgi, Laks, Dargin, Dargoa. And then you have the non-Caucasian Aboriginal peoples of Dagestan, such as Azerbaijanis, who are Turkic, Kumyk, who are descended from the ancient Khazars, who are the European Jewish Turkic tribe that converted, and from whom many Ashkenazi Jews allegedly descended. That's another story we can get into. In fact, I may have a podcast with someone on this very topic. Why did we go there? I can't even remember why I even went there. But anyway, yes, so Derbent was the capital. So it shouldn't be called Dagestan. It should be called Albania. And Albania, that we know today, should not be called Albania. It should be called, in their own language, if I pronounce this right, it's called Shqipiria. And in their foreign designation, there was two names, and I can't remember how to pronounce them exactly. One's Arboria or Arberia, and something else like this. So they shouldn't be called Albania should not be called Albania. It should be called what I've just said. And Dagestan should not be called Dagestan. It should be called Albania. So deal with that. Make of that what you will. And you'll find this kind of lazy naming, this lazy nomenclature, if I've said the word right, is very typical of the Romans. They would, whenever they would take a region, they would, rather than invent a new word, they would just borrow one. So Iberia, we know the Iberian Peninsula is Spain and Portugal, but Iberia is also the name of Georgia, as in the country of Georgia, the South Caucasus country bordering Turkey and who else do they border? Let me think. Turkey and Azerbaijan, more or less, and Armenia. Yeah, that's the country. So that's the thing. That's that. Okay, as I mentioned, the link to the Sahaba. So the Battle of Qadisiyah, which was led or generaled by Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas, the Sahabi, that's when the Persians brought all of their satrapies and all of their provinces and all of their colonial forces to bear against again to fight the Sahaba under the reign. This is the Khilafah of Umar ibn al-Khattab, and amongst the Persian contingent, the if you like Imperial Persian army, there was a delegation from Caucasian Albania. This is what the Europeans would call it, Dagestan. Now it's called Dagestan. Then it was called Iran. Amongst the Arabs and the Iranians, it was called Iran, and it kept this name for many, many centuries until it kind of changed or morphed towards Shirivan and eventually Dagestan in the north, and Azerbaijan took the name from the south. Is a kind of irredentist plot against actual Azerbaijan, which is in Iran, which was taken also under the reign of Umar ibn al-Khattab. So this prince who was in charge of the contingent from Caucasian Albania, stroke Iran, spoke modern day Dagestan, Azerbaijan. His name was Javan Sher or Javan Shir, which means young lion. Javan meaning young in Persian, and Sher meaning lion. Sher Khan from Jungle Book is probably known to perhaps known to many people beyond even English speakers. So after he was a young guy as well. He was half Persian, because the ruling elite of Caucasian Albania included, they intermarried with the Persian aristocracy, the Sassanid aristocracy, in order, because that's how they would control their provinces. So he was at least half Caucasian Albanian, half stroke Dagestani, if you like, and half Iranian, half Persian, which makes an interesting mix physically from what I've seen. And he was a teenager at the time, maybe 18, I think the books say. And anyway, after that battle concluded with a victory, of course, for the Muslims, a huge victory, Qadisiyah, and there was many miracles performed there, and many interesting even fiqh rulings or issues of fiqh connected to that battle, such as, for example, Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas. We know he was suffering from scabies, a kind of skin disease, and so he was unable to at the front line. He had to do it from a distance, from a copula, and he was given instructions, and he got mocked for this, and so on and so forth. And also he was the companion about whom the Prophet said, "Shoot," meaning shoot your arrow for Allah. May my mother and father be sacrificed for you. And from what I recall, he's the only Sahabi to whom the Prophet made this qasam, that is qasam the right word? This oath. May my mother and father be sacrificed for you, O Sa'ad. And his prayer was answered as well. He's one of those who had this, was given this gift. Anyway, so Javan Shir, after the Muslims won, he retreated back to Dagestan. Persian Empire collapsed, was overtaken by the Muslims under the reign of the Khulafa Rashidun. And we don't hear about this region anymore, this Caucasian Albania, and this young man, until he becomes an older man. He stays a king. And in the reign of Muawiyah, he actually travels in person, and we know about this not from any Muslim sources, but from their own sources, from Armenian and other writers. Interestingly, he travels all the way back to Damascus, and he pleads with Muawiyah for some concessions, financial concessions. He said that there's the tax revenue, the jizya, is quite burdensome for whatever reasons, I can't recall, even if they mentioned it may be due to bad harvest that year, or it may be, or complaints from the nobles. And so Muawiyah gives him practically every concession he asks for, every financial concession, which was very surprising. These are the kuffar, by the way, kuffar Christians, who were bearing witness to the magnanimity, because the Islamic Empire at that time was vast and all-powerful compared to these small broken provinces, these remnants of once great empires of Rome and Persia. And so so he was so they were honest enough, even then they were honest enough to acknowledge the justice and the generosity and decency of the Muslims. And they wrote about this, that this man who rules, as far as they were concerned, he rules the entire world, and yet he mixes he balances his power, his military potency, with decency and justice, and leniency, and tolerance, and so on and so forth. And there's other things we can mention about the story, but yeah, we're just, as I said, just bringing out the nuggets of data just in case anyone may find them interesting. Any other questions? Where can we find the story? So there's an Armenian historian. He wrote a book. It's in one of my videos actually. I reference the name of the book. It's a difficult word name to pronounce it, but basically it's called The History of Albania, History of Caucasian Albania. That's its English name, but it's Arabic. Its original name is Armenian, and the Armenians call this place Agvank. You can see the similarity: Agvank, Alban, Albania, whatever. And incidentally, the reason it's called Albania is because it's linked to Alpania, which is thought to be something to do with the mountains, and then they have a deity, a pagan deity, linked to that as well. But yeah, I have a video where I mentioned it. I think it's in the civilization playlist on the Abbasids. I show a screenshot of the text of the book, and I mentioned the story. I think in the Umayyad one as well. Umayyads and done. What else we got? Any other questions? Why have you very low views? Are you shadow banned? Possibly. I'm not too sure what shadow banning is. I've seen it explained, but I still don't quite get it. But most of the low view, a big reason for the low views is entirely my own doing, in that I don't upload regularly enough, and my videos are very involved and in depth, which is too much to engage with most people. You know, there's way, even the videos that I've got up, they could be chopped up very easily, but I just haven't got around to it. Maybe if I find some volunteers, they could do that for me. But you know, in a 30-minute video or 50-minute video, there's easily 30-40 clips that could be taken out. Whatever, perhaps there's that many, and if they're uploaded, that could increase the viewership, because it could be a filler until a video drops. So yeah, I don't help either by the lack of the volume of uploads, and actually the volume in terms of the size of the videos themselves. So any volunteers, we could do that, and yeah. Yeah, true. Majority of the world. Well, we have to be careful here. We would say that most Muslims are upon the fitrah, and that their fitrah is corrupted. So ordinarily, whether people will say, I'm a Salafi, I'm an Athari, is not how we would judge. The average person, if you were to ask them, the Muslim I'm talking about now, do you believe Allah is, where is Allah? They would point to the sky. Do you believe He's omnipotent, omniscient, all-knowing, all-powerful, all-hearing? Do you believe the Quran and His speech is word revealed? Yes. Do you believe the Prophet is perfect, and he gave us his religion, he fulfilled his commission, and that his sunnah is the example for all mankind? They will say yes, and so on and so forth. Khalas, then you are a true Sunni Muslim. If you have to proactively reject the articles of faith. Most people intuitively will believe the Quran, everything it says. I'm saying Muslims here, and they will believe. If they believe something is from the Prophet, they will be accepted. But what happens is, with the firq, the groups, the sects that broke away from Ahlul Sunnah, they will poison the minds of the Ummah, and play upon labels and say, you need to be this, you need to be that, and being a Salafi means this, being a Wahhabi means that, and as opposed to Ashari and whatever. And a lot of confusion is fed in. But the average Muslim, if they are sincere, they will accept the fitri, intuitive beliefs, aqaid, creeds, credos, and pillars of Iman and Islam and Ihsan that all Muslims should, and that are revealed. Okay, Daniel has done a 3+ hours on post-debate walkthrough, so I don't think the low views have anything to do with your content. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I saw, it's how it is. And if you've got a large platform, and people are subscribed, they're going to know you're live, and then they're going to, chime in and maybe tell everyone else about it. But, like I said, even if there was one person on this chat who I could interact with just for testing the tech, I would be more than happy. I would have, closed today's session happily. But alhamdulillah, if there's 29 or so watching, it seems, then that's great. And you've been bearing with me, waffling for almost an hour. So that's kudos to everyone in the chat and everyone watching. What else? Any other questions? Have you ever broken bread with them in these Eastern Muslim countries in your travels? Yeah, I've yes, alhamdulillah. We've been very active in Eastern Europe and the border region with the former Soviet Union. I was quite active there some years ago, and starting in some ways to get active again. We'll see what happens. Okay, a question about shirk of rububiyyah. I have a very short video on this. I mean, not exhaustive, of course. We could spend a lot of time on this. It will be covered in the series that's ongoing now. But in the first playlist, I mention that what is the distinguishing thing between rububiyyah, uluhiyyah, and asma wa sifat, and what becomes shirk in these three things. It's a very short video, but it will give it at least a baseline from which to look into it further. But essentially, there's certain creative agencies, let's say to use English terms, divine agencies that only Allah has reserves for Himself, and therefore anyone who seeks to challenge Allah in His Godship, which is, or Lord Godship, which would be a good translation of rububiyyah, then they have committed shirk, whether by denying those attributes from Allah through ta'til, through negationism, or via negativa, what would be the verbal noun? Anyway, let's say through epiphatic theology, through ta'til. When you deny these attributes of Allah, these agencies, these abilities from Allah, then you commit shirk of negation. And when you ascribe these attributes of Allah, of Allah's divine Godship, His divine Lord Godship, to other than Him, then you have associated those as partners with Him. You have made them into Lord Gods, as well as whether you accept the belief in God or not. This is why, incidentally, an atheist is a mushrik. It sounds like an oxymoron, right, or a contradiction in terms. An atheist being a polytheist, theism being the denial of theism, denial of the theo of God, and polytheism meaning belief in many gods. But the atheist is a mushrik according to the Islamic standard. Again, the problem is it gets lost in translation, so it might sound contradictory in English, but I hope I explain it fairly well in the video entitled Atheism is Polytheism. I think that's what I've called it. It's just a few minutes video, but I explain it there, and I give some quotes from Ibn al-Qayyim and I think Makrizi as well, and as always a couple of ayat to reinforce it. I'll reinforce the point. What else we got here? Any other questions? Nuh alayhi salam did dawah for 950 years and I only had a few followers, so don't worry about how many people are watching. Keep up the good work. Focus on Aqidah and Salaf. Barakallah feek. And Allah yubarak feek to you too, Attila. We'll try inshallah. So next playlist, I have to finish the current playlist. I'll finish this one first, or I'll get to the nth episode or the penultimate episode, as I do with every other playlist, and then move on to another playlist, and then always leave the last one until you get the feedback and see in case you've missed anything. How have you noticed how being called Madkhali is a new Wahhabi? Can you speak about this new phenomenon? Yeah, this is true. It's become a catch-all term. I did a video. I mentioned this in a video in response to Daniel on the Daniel playlist called Madkhali Mythos or Madkhali Mythology, where basically the term has the equivalence of a smear of the smear of anti-Semitism. So if you want to vilify someone, demonize them, shut them down, shut them out of a conversation, have everyone think that this person is a lunatic, And an oppressor, you would call them, this is what pro-Israelis would do, I mean, they would call someone an anti-Semite just to deflect. And they admit this amongst them. They have, at the ministerial level, they admit that it's just a stratagem with them, a tactic with them perhaps, to silence opposition to their own criminality by saying you're anti-Semite, whereas they themselves are projecting their own racism. And of course, we could deconstruct this term as being for the ridiculousness of it, because Palestinians are themselves Semites, and in fact, according to DNA tests, they have more Semitic ancient Hebrew blood than many Ashkenazi Jews, at least, who have a mixture of undoubtedly some original Semitic blood, but mixed with a lot of European blood, including perhaps the blood of the Khazars we spoke of, which brings us right back to the area we're talking about, north of the Caucasus. So Madkhali has the same effect, in that if you want to have someone vilified and demonized as someone who's crazy and in support of oppression and not just, you would simply say this person's a Madkhali. That's not to say that the word doesn't have some meaning. Of course, all words have an etymology. It has a meaning and a story to it, and it's linked to an individual, of course, Sheikh Rabi bin Hadi al-Madkhali. But it's gone beyond that. It's not confined to him or his tribe or people who would classify themselves as students of him, Islamic students of him. It's gone way beyond that, and it's merely a smear. That's why the default for me, and I'm sure it's the same for many, including maybe the brothers asking, if you hear someone saying the word Madkhali, unless this person themselves are strong upon the Sunnah and themselves, inshallah, good Sunni Muslims, good Atharis, then you should assume that this person is just a deviant and looking for, or an ignoramus, and looking for a way to smear an opponent. So you'll find, for example, Shia will use the word Madkhali, Hizb ut-Tahrir, Tahriris will use it, hardcore Sufis will use it, even atheists and Zionists will use it as a smear, you'll find, and Tankis, left-wing Assadists will use the term Madkhali. So it's divorced of any reality at that point. It just becomes nonsensical. Okay, that looks like some interesting text there. That E that's upside down, I know you have that in the Azerbaijani or Azeri alphabet. I wonder if that's where it's from. Or is it just your thing? But anyway, which book would you recommend for an introduction to how borders can come to an end and how they affect the modern world? I don't know if there are books on how they can come to an end, other than general books about, world expansion, conquest, irredentism, but certainly most borders in the world today, not just Islamic, but even if we stay within Europe, it's the victors of a particular battle or major war who dictate and who design the borders. Even as we know famously, the borders of Syria, what is geographic Syria, Bilad al-Sham, were largely carved up by Sykes-Picot. These two was known as the Sykes-Picot Agreement. These two French and British civil servants who essentially with a map and a pen and a ruler, pencil and a ruler, carved up what is known as geographic Syria, and bits of it also went into Turkey, bits of it in Saudi as well, and maybe the arid region is also in Iraq. Maybe even Sinai, I think, would be nicer if it was part of geographic Syria. No offense to any Egyptians. But even in Europe itself, after World War One, Hungary lost a lot, maybe 2/3 of its landmass. It lost it to what then became Yugoslavia, what is now Serbia and Croatia and Romania. Transylvania, famous due to Bram Stoker's Dracula, Transylvania, this region which is in the western side of Romania, surrounded by the Carpathian Mountains. That area, Erdele, I believe it's pronounced in amongst the Magyars, the Hungarians. That's actually historically Hungarian country. Vojvodina, which is the northern province of Serbia, north of Belgrade, was historic Hungary, Magyar country, because the Hungarians, they are from the Finno-Ugric peoples of Siberia. They came down, crossed the Urals, through a land which became Islamified. We can go into that another time. Then they crossed the Carpathian Mountains, and they settled on the plains. Bear in mind, these are from the Eurasian steppes. These people, Attila the Hun, we had an Attila's earlier. Attila the Hun and his people, they are people of the open steppe, like the Mongols, like the Turks historically. And so they settled on the Hungarian plain, and that's indicative of where Greater Hungary should actually be, because the plains were everywhere where the Hungarian, the Magyars as they call themselves, would be able to roam free and to put their horses to pasture. So even even Hungary, just by way of example, has lost 2/3 of its territory just because it lost the war. Or it was on the wrong side. It was on the losing side of a war. If you look at Macedonia, it's divided between Bulgaria and Greece, and you could say bits of other places. I've been to actually the Bulgarian part of Macedonia, and it borders a Muslim region where they're indigenous Bulgarian Muslims called Pomaks. Pomak, from the Slavic word, for those familiar, pomosh, means help. So Pomak comes from pomosh because they were considered they helped the Ottomans and the Muslims even before there were Ottomans and Muslims in the area, because they'd already embraced Islam. So this is one of the proofs that there were Muslims in the Balkans even before the Ottoman conquests by several centuries. Of course, we know the Muslims at the time of the Sahaba even tried, or post-Sahaba, I should say. No, during the time Sahaba, I should say, with the first conquest of Constantinople, or the failed conquest of Constantinople, which is a sunnah, of course, something praised by the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So since that time, there's been interaction with Muslims there, but even you had settled communities, not just military. Military encampments, but settled convert communities have been in the Balkans centuries before the Ottomans. And so when the Ottomans wanted to take this area, they would rely on the local Muslims to help, in whatever way a vanguard would help. And that's why they were, this is the theory anyway, why they are called Pomaks, because it means, Ansar, essentially. It's a translation of the word Ansar. They were the Ansar, the local Muslims in the Balkans of the Rhodope mountain region of Greece and Bulgaria, ancient Thrace, for those who are familiar with those terms. They helped, there were Muslims there before the Ottomans actually came, and so they were called the Ansar, i.e. Pomaks, which is the name they have today. And one of the muftis there, he once said he actually tested this theory. He said you could test this theory out even today by going to the graveyard, the ancient, not ancient, let's say old historic cemeteries of the Muslims, and you'll find they have Arabic names of Muslims who buried there, and the dates are in the 1200s, 1100s, and so on. 1200s certainly, which was a couple of centuries before the Ottomans came to the region. So there you go. Can you give thou to Grzegorz Braun, the Polish MP who exposes genocide against Palestinians, Tower of Babels? Yeah, he's really interesting, this Polish MP, for thinking about the right person. He seems to be very Islamophilic, speaking well of Islam, speaking well of Muslims, in an environment where the train of thought is Islamophobic. And unfortunately, oftentimes issues of migration get conflated and confused with issues with Islam. We shouldn't be too concerned with defending migration issues or not leave that to social justice warriors. Our concern is to present the da'wah of the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the religion which Allah commissioned him with, which is to call to Tawheed. That should be our da'wah, and not really allow ourselves to get mixed up in the other aspects. And so this is what we need to be presenting to Braun, the Polish MP, and many others. Incidentally, you must have heard about the AFD and Elon Musk supporting the AFD, this far-right, supposed far-right, four forks, far-right party of Germany. One of their guys became Muslim, in fact, one of their MPs, Artur, I've got his surname. I spoke to him actually some years ago, had some interaction with him. So he became a Muslim, and he's a far-right German. You know, you could say they'd be considered neo-Nazis at one stage, but he became Muslim, and he stayed in the party. He stayed an MP, but he just abandoned his Islamophobia that he was on, and I believe he's from the Volga German community. The Volga Germans were the Germans who Catherine the Great sent out into to farm arable land that had hitherto been under Muslim domination, and because she didn't trust the Russians to be good enough or to be as industrious enough to farm as the Germans, Catherine the Great herself, she was a German, of course, the German stock, so she got a bunch of her own countrymen, kinsmen, just as she had made hijrah, if you like, to Russia. So she sent over a bunch of Germans around the Volga region, and they became the Volga Germans. And after Stalin's purge, many of them ended up in Siberia and Kazakhstan, and many, I don't exaggerate, but communities of them have embraced Islam en masse. I don't want to say mass conversion as in, you know, there's many substantial majority of them, but certainly there are groupings of them who have become Muslim, of these Volga Germans. Quite interesting. And I actually interviewed a lady in an ethnographic survey I undertook. Arthur Wagner, Jazakallah, that's him, Arthur Wagner. Yes, so I interviewed, mashallah, it's so good to have an informed audience. This is really, really good, alhamdulillah. So I interviewed a sister who had converted from the Volga German community, and she was speaking on behalf, and she was talking about their trials, and also of the Pontic Greeks. I also, they have a similar kind of setup in that they're far away from their ancestral homes, be they Germany or Greece respectively, but they find themselves in, you know, the leftovers of empires in some strange, well, not strange to them, but strange to the people of their motherland, ancestral homes. And following the collapse of the Soviet Union, the German government tried to bring back, or was inviting and giving incentivizing Volga Germans, to return to Germany proper, whereas many of them there would have preferred to have their own little autonomous republic, a titular enclave like you get in the Caucasus, like in the Muslim parts of the Volga. And like I said, a good few of them became Muslim, and Arthur Wagner either is a Volga German Muslim, or he was helping rehabilitate. From my conversation with him, part of what he was doing was helping rehabilitate, or no, that's not the right word, helping settle, let's say, Volga German emigrants, if I pronounce that right, from Kazakhstan and these places, and Siberia, Russian Siberia, and so on, so forth, back into Germany proper. And that's, I think, how he became, if I'm vaguely recollect, I think that's how he got his interactions with Islam through because those people in those parts of the world are far more in tune with Muslims, because they see Islam as indigenous in those parts of Eastern Europe, whereas in Central Europe, which is what Germany is, Islam is seen as foreign. It's color-coded because many of the Muslims are, of a darker hue, and they're distinguishable far more than in Eastern Europe, where they're part of the landscape and even predate Christianity in some regions. In Bosnia, the other factor was yes, the Bogomils, I think you're referring to, right? Yes, yeah, that's right. They had some beliefs that were common to Islam. They pray. They had certain prayers, certain things. They were against saint worship in many aspects. They had some fasting. Many traditions of theirs were already compatible, if you like, with Muslims, and they were considered heretics both by the Catholics to the west and the Orthodox to the east. Yes, there you go. The Bogomils rejected the cross as well. The Bosnian Church, or the Bogomils. Some say they were Manichaean. They had some kind of ancient Manichaean. But in either way, there were several factors. So one is their aqidah itself, their creed, their theology had many alignments. Don't exaggerate the amount, but there were some alignments with Islam. Then their practice they had some practices which aligned with Islam. And then on top of that, there was the political factor, that there was enmity between the Serbs to the east and the Croats to the west, because Bosnia was independent and has been since the other two nations of the so-called Yugoslavia have been independent. So they had that those kind of fissures, natural ethnic fissures. And then you had a concerted effort of da'wah amongst the Bosnians. All of these things, and then of course when the Ottomans took the whole of the area, the Bosnian church was alone, whereas the Croats who came under Ottoman rule, they still had, the papacy, and they could still lean on Rome and the rest of the Catholic world. Likewise, the Serbs still had Orthodox Christianity from, whether within the Ottoman Empire or across to St. Petersburg and elsewhere. They still had Orthodox Christian connections, whereas Bogomils, they were by themselves. So that church, it was cut off. It was a standalone, a religious isolate, if you like, and that made them easier pickings for da'wah, essentially. And I call this weaponized da'wah. And this is how you can actually engineer mass conversions by looking at these factors which were apparent and what's the word I'm looking for? Apparent and present with the Bogomils, or the Bogomil Church, or the Bosnian Church, the Bosnian Church, i.e. the Bogomils. But you find these factors with other nations as well, small nations around the world, and I'll keep them secret because just as much as Christians may be, Muslims may be able to do some weaponized dawah and get some mass conversion, so can others as well, and we'd rather keep it to ourselves. And then another reason, of course, in the Battle of Kosovo-Poje in 1480, what is it? I don't want to make a mistake. Anyways, 14 something, Kosovo-Poje, when the huge Christian coalition fought the Ottomans. In the Ottoman army, in the Christian coalition, the right wing, the right flank of the coalition was a Bosnian flank. So you had the Serbian prince, I believe, Lazar, who was later became a saint. He was beatified, if that's the right word, as a saint. He was the head of the overall, Yugoslav wing, if you like. Yugoslav is an anachronism, but anyway. And then the Hungarian, I think King Bela. No, was King Bela part of it? Or am I mixing up my battles? But anyway, the Hungarians. They're always present in all the anti-Ottoman wars until they became on the Ottoman side. But the point I wanted to get to is that the Bosnian wing, these are Christians, bear in mind, the Bosnian wing of the Christian coalition facing, you could call it a counter-crusading coalition, counter-jihad coalition, facing the Ottomans, was successful on the battlefield. The Bosnians gave themselves a very good account of themselves, so much so that the Bosnian duke decided, we've won, we've beaten the Muslims, let's go home. And so they left the scene of the theatre of battle. They actually thought they'd won because they defeated the Ottomans they faced. But little did they know that everywhere else the Ottomans were routing the Christian coalition that was set against them in the plains of Kosovo, the infamous plains of Kosovo. So since that time, the Ottomans were very impressed with the Bosnians. They realized these guys have got, they've got some fighting prowess. And they happen to be, the people of the Dalmatian coast, the largest Europeans of all Europeans, the largest, physically, they're the largest of all European peoples. If you look on, Wikipedia or whatever, it will say the Netherlands, they're the largest Europeans, the tallest, etc. But that's only because the Dalmatian people are divided across 3 countries, and then they are mixed with other ethnic phenotypes. So the Dalmatian coast is split. Pardon the pun, because Split is the capital of Croatia. Divided between. Is it the capital? No, it's Zagreb. Sorry, it's a city in Croatia. Divided between Croatia, Bosnia, and Montenegro. So, but these Dalmatians, the people of this tribe of that coast, are the largest of all European people. They were known as anthropologically robust. They're a robust nation. They have large girth, meaning thick girth around their ankles and their wrists. Jaws, solid jaws, big people, so they make for hardy fighters. But interestingly, going back to the North Caucasus, unlike the people of the North Caucasus, they lost that fighting prowess. They lost the martial culture. So where you still get high highly competitive combat athletes and combat skills, fighting skills from the North Caucasus, infamously so, whether we look into the Olympics or to MMA or wherever it may be, or even in terms of quote-unquote jihad. You don't find the same in Yugoslavia amongst the Dinaric people, the Bosnians and so on, because they've been, because of the colonial legacy, first with the Austrians when they took over, and so there was a mass exodus, a mass hijrah of the people of Bosnia towards the Ottoman Empire, and then later with the Yugoslavia and the Serbian genocide, etc. So there's more Bosnians or people of Bosnian stock in what is now Turkey than there are in Bosnia. Then you've got the Sanjak, which is this border region between Montenegro and Serbia, split between the two. Sanjak Liji, if I pronounce that right, and they're Bosnians there, and yeah, they're very, very large people, very genetically robust, but unfortunately, this culture of combat has not been fostered since the demise of the Ottoman Empire. Whereas for whatever reason, the North Caucasus kept their culture of combat. They kept their own. They have their own martial arts. In fact, even before sambo and judo and wrestling, they have their own form of martial arts, centuries old. Just like you find many of the nations, Mongols, etc., and others, they have their own unique forms of wrestling and so on. Okay, interesting. So, yeah, got some other people who are nerds. Yeah, so that's good. I was in Paraguay recently. A Da'i showed me videos of rural mass conversions to Islam by him alone. Alhamdulillah. Yeah, mashallah. When the as we said, when the signs are there. No, I forgot the words now. Anyway, when the certain factors are there, it can facilitate mass conversions. You found the same with the African Americans at the time of, Muhammad Ali and Malcolm X. Same kind of factors there. Maybe that's a hint towards some of them. And there's many nations where this weaponized dawah can and should be employed or deployed. SubhanAllah, we've gone on for 1 hour 20 minutes. We'll give it another 10 minutes, and then we'll inshallah call it a shot, unless someone else has any questions. Do you have an email, WhatsApp, or LinkedIn? I don't have a LinkedIn. I have emails. I don't share them, of course. WhatsApp I don't share, but in terms of getting in touch, if you just DMs through Facebook. Not that I don't manage that Facebook, by the way. I've opened a Knowledge North Facebook account, and I don't even think I control it, because people post stuff and I just don't keep on top of it. But I will get private messenger messages. Likewise through Twitter, which I do actively oversee, my own Twitter account, Knowledge North one. If you DM me there, DMs are open. So yeah, there's two ways. Welcome, salam, brother. Is that the lesbian brother? Looks to be. Anyway, yeah. If there's nothing else, we'll wind down. As I said, this was a test run. It was a trial, and alhamdulillah, it seems to be going okay. Alhamdulillah. So we have a brother we have an ancestor amongst us from the Caucasian Albanian people. They were amongst this what would you call them? Tribal confederation, which is what it was, the people of Iran. The largest group were the Udis, and amongst them were the closest people to the Udis who still existed. They're still Christians, in fact, are the Lezgins, and they traverse the border of Dagestan, Azerbaijan, and they even have a nationalist independent movement, which of course is deemed as terroristic by at least one of those countries, by the country to the south, but by the country to the north, they perhaps support it. And of course, there's nothing wrong with wanting to see kindred peoples united in one polity. Why it doesn't make sense? And you find to have them split, and these are just, as I said, the vestiges of colonial experiments, like with the Pakhtun. The Pathans are divided between Pakistan and the Durrani line and Afghanistan, not because they wanted it to be like that, not did the Muslims on either side want that, but that's how the British decided that's how it's going to be. Likewise with Palestine, likewise with Kashmir, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, and everywhere else. There's practically every single Muslim country has fault lines, ethnic fault lines, which are not natural. These borders are not natural. What I mean by natural, you could say all borders are fallacious in some way. I mean that they're artificial in the sense that they don't necessarily follow natural contours or rivers or mountain ranges. Not necessarily. They're much more arbitrary than that, particularly amongst Muslims. And this is not by accident, but by design. This was done deliberately to ensure there would be ethnic conflict, lasting ethnic conflict, post-colonial colony or post-colonization. Or some heavy questions here. So if I'm ignoring them, it's not because I'm ignoring them. It's only because I'm ignoring them, in the sense that they will take to do justice to them. It will take a bit of time, and I don't want this stream to go on so long. So I'm going to ignore some questions just because they are so important, and that I don't want to not give them their due worth. So I'll leave some of the more involved questions, inshallah. I don't get until when we'll play by their rules still, since they don't abide by them themselves. May Allah relieve us all. Indeed, may Allah relieve us all. Inshallah, the victory is promised. It is qareeb. We just have to be worthy of it. This is a very important distinction. This is the difference between Ahlul Sunnah, our manhaj in these issues, and Ahlul Bid'ah, is that we appreciate that everything that happens is by the qadr of Allah, and in terms of His nasr, His victory, we have to be deserving of it. That Allah does not change the condition of a people from being within His grace to absolving themselves of it until they change what is within themselves. And there's many ayat, other ayat besides this one, and many hadith which speak to this dynamic, the sunnah of Allah, this God dynamic. We need to be deserving, and when we're deserving, we are given power in the land, as is very heavily emphasized in a very I was going to say eloquently, every ayah is eloquent, but you know what I mean, very obviously, let's say, emphasized in Surah Nur verse 55. Okay, alhamdulillah. But Jazakallah, appreciate all the likes and all the loves. So 5 minutes left. If there's anyone that's got any questions, was Imam as-Sa'buni the last major Shafi Athari of Khurasan? That's a good question. I don't know. He's certainly not the last major Athari, but he was the last Shafi Athari. Incidentally, there's a Shafi Athari from the coastal region of what's now the Persian Gulf, or the Arabs call the Arab Gulf. And you know this song, Innani Wahhabi, this nasheed, this qasida, in fact. I have it in the second video of my Ottoman playlist. That qasida, that nasheed, qasida, not nasheed, it was penned by a Persian Shafi Athari, Iranian Shafi Athari. I just forgot his exact tribe and details and city, but yeah, maybe when I do a video. I want to do videos, by the way. Yeah, I found it very powerful nasheed, mashallah. I want to do a playlist on the major ethnic groups of the world, starting with the major Muslims or maybe limited to the major Muslims, i.e. Arabs, Persians, Turks, and then and of course they have divisions within them. So amongst the Arabs you have people of Sham and whatever, and people of Yemen and whatever, and then amongst the Persians you have the Kurds, you have the Pakhtuns, or so-called Afghans, the Persians proper, and then Ossetians also. And then and I want to do one which is related to that, a playlist on extinct nations, al-Ba'ida, perhaps is an Arabic way of saying it, the perished nations, whether perished, all of it of course due to the qadr of Allah, but whether perished as in terms of a punishment, people were destroyed because they opposed their messengers and prophets, or just because of other pogroms and genocides by people, so or dying out due to great replacements, to use that term. So for example, Khwarizm, what happened to the people of Khwarizm? Where have they gone? Ma wara an-Nahr, these were Persian peoples, but they are Persian no more. Why not? Except some small pockets in Bukhara and Samarkand, etc. What happened to these people? The Sarmatians. What happened to the Sarmatians? What happened to the Cretians? and I'm only here speaking about those who've got links to Islam, the Ostrogoths, the Eastern Goths, what happened to them. Some of this history is fascinating when you see it tie in terms of modern world, and see where their ancestors, if for those who have some semblance of descent from them, have survived, and what their contributions are to Islam. Anyway, something I find quite fascinating, so hopefully others will do. And of course we've got the well-known one. The more obvious common ones are things like Spain, the Muslims of Spain, the Moriscos, and so on. So inshallah we'll maybe get into all of that. Do I follow a madhab? I mean, I'm not qualified. I'm not so well versed in fiqh. I studied, of course, in the Islamic university I studied in, but I'm not at the level where I could attach myself to a madhab and say I am such and such Hanafi, such and such Shafi. Of course, I honorifically for the imams, not for me, right? But for them, I would want to attach myself to them, but it would be a false description, because I have no expertise in not what I would consider expertise. I just have elementary bachelor's level study of fiqh in an Islamic university, which I don't think qualifies me. There are brothers who in the same university or universities who do then specialize in fiqh at a master's level, or in their private studies, even if they don't do master's level and PhD, still they specialize. I'm not one of them. I studied what I needed to study to pass exams, and then I did some private classes outside, but not at the level where I could say I am strong in any one particular madhab. So for that reason, it would be disingenuous of me to say I'm a Shafi, I'm a Maliki, I'm a Hanbali. So then and that's not a cop out on me trying to sound pious. That's a reality. That's what these when someone says I am such and such a Hanafi, it means he's mastered that Hanafi madhab, and likewise Maliki, Hanbali, Shafi, or he should be very competent and have a degree of fluency in that, and very literate in those texts. In the library of that madhab, in that school of jurisprudence, which I am not. That's not my expertise. I've got elementary bachelor's level. I would say you'd need postgraduate level, not undergraduate level, to even begin to ascribe that name to yourself. Or as I said, you've focused on it privately. So I will, the basic Ahlul Hadith Athari way is that you try to find the strongest evidence. You try to follow the evidence without making taqleed, and unless you can't compute the evidence, it doesn't make one's ability is not where they can understand the nuances and minutiae of the contentions between the various rulings, and therefore one may be forced to make taqleed of a scholar they trust. But to be clear, many scholars will say that the taqleed will not be blameworthy in this regard, so long as you still inquire about the evidence. That is, even if you don't understand it, you still need to know, or you should ask, okay, but on which ayah was this ruling based? On which hadith or set of ahadith did this madhab come to this conclusion? Even if you can't comprehend it or really understand it, at least you've asked and you've understood. It has a source from Allah and His Messenger, because that is what we are. Ahlul Sunnah, our da'wah is to Allah and His Messenger. قال الله وقال Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's where we take our religion from. So even if we don't understand it, we should inquire about it, and that's the difference. As this is the three-way split. There's a false dichotomy between the muqallid and the mujtahid, because there's a third middle way, which is the mu'tabi, or the tabi, if you like, the one who follows the evidence. So you have the muqallid, blind follower, in terms of blameworthy blind following. I mean, in that he just whatever his scholars or his school says, regardless of the veracity of the evidence, just because his school says that's what he'll go by, he or she. And if they come across a counter narrative which may be stronger, it doesn't matter, because they won't oppose their school. That's the blameworthy type of taqleed. Then you have ijtihad, which is obviously for those who are strong in scholarship, the ulama. But in between, inshallah, this is what we should all strive to, at least if we not strive for further towards scholarship, is to be followers of the proofs, to make ittiba' of the evidences. Okay, yes. Thoughts on the recent episodes between Muhammad Jawab, Jake, and Daniel. That's going to take a lot. So maybe we'll give that its more dedicated time. Will I keep the stream up? It depends. I do intend to keep forthcoming streams up. I don't know if this one was worthwhile. It depends if people in the chat, as 16 now, drop down. Hopefully that's only because it's very late. So if majority or enough people say keep it up, I'll keep it up, perhaps, and take it down eventually. I don't know. Yeah, maybe I'll keep it up. You mentioned Umar al-Ba'ida. Is that a book from Harun Yahya? No, I mean, maybe he's got a book and he's used that term. The Perish Nations, right? Did he have a book called Perish Nations? I lifted that title, the English one, but anyway, from him, because I did a brochure seems like a long time ago, which was published in Dawah centers in the Middle East. So I did a brochure with that title. It's quite nice, if I do say so myself, with various ayat and some nice archaeological photographs. It was very, very colourful, but it wasn't, of a high standard in terms of its print quality or its. I think the language was fine, but the photographs were very poor. This was, before one could access stock images. Yeah, so no, it's I didn't use his book, even if it had the same title, Perish Nations. So I think I've actually went past the 90 minutes, and I'm sure I've kept people up way too long. Okay, final question. Why did you? Yeah, we'll end with some nice to end with a bit of controversy, bit of a kerfuffle. Why did you promote Uyghur genocide denial on your Twitter and promote Shahid Bolson, who denies Uyghur genocide? Okay, one has to define the word promote here. What does promote mean? Do we encourage people that this person is upon the truth and take everything for them, or do we agree with them in a particular field? So if I agree with someone, in an issue of nutrition, in an issue of combat, in an issue of language, IT, wherever it may be, that doesn't mean that I agree with he in everything with glee, right? So it's not a question of promotion. It's that when someone says something good and we can use that to advance our own position, we may retweet it, we may repost it, we may quote it. It doesn't mean anything. I mean, it doesn't mean that we're promoting them as in that we are, supporting them. And there are hadith which speaks to this. Where Shaitan's speech was taken, and the Prophet replied by saying he spoke the truth though he be a liar. There's two different versions. One is, I think, Sadaqa wa huwa kadhab, and one with wa huwa kadhub. He spoke the truth even though he's a liar, and he's a liar. So if you can take from Shaitan where he says something correctly, why can't you take from anyone lesser than him? Not that I'm saying that the brother you mentioned is a Shaitan, astaghfirullah, and I'm not sure which quote-unquote Uyghur genocide denier you're referring to. But yeah, promotion is a loaded term. I don't accept that term. And there's religious aspect of promotion, and then there's simply, retweeting or quoting and quotation. Quotation, to quote is not to promote. There you go. There's a round view. To quote is not necessarily to promote, even though it may get your goat. Make your work that was seen heavy on your skin. Jazakallah khair. I really appreciate all of that. So someone's saying, why are you checking your DMs? I know where the DMs are. If they're in X, I'll have a look now. If they're in in the next whatever, not right now, but I'll look inshallah, and I'll check Facebook if there's any DMs there. But I don't know where else they could be. But with that, I think I've taken everyone's time, including my own, more than was deserved, and you've been very gracious to listen to me for so long. Unscripted, unstructured, and hopefully not unbeneficial. So with that, I will bid you all good night, and inshallah we'll do this properly, if this can be deemed improper, again in the month of February, inshallah. And if anyone's got any specific topics they'd like to be addressed, do of course let me know in the comments, whichever comment, place, community post, whatever. And also I will try to bring some structure as well in some subjects I will cover. I really want to cover jihad, because I think I can get away with it. I've been arrested enough not to worry about getting arrested again. So maybe we'll get into issues of jihad and other things like that. But anyway, we leave it at that. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.